Welcome back, everyone. We are going to very quickly, in the next 15 minutes or so, help you figure out what category of kayak you should be in if you're a brand new paddler and you're losing your mind trying to figure out what kind of boat to get. I think that this will help. Let's go. Welcome back, everyone. It is good to see you all. The goal of this channel has always been to get people outside, and a big bulk of that has been getting people outside kayaking. Over the course of years, I've done a number of videos that go over the forward stroke, go over basic skills, and I've done a bunch of videos about choosing a kayak. Specifically, one that talked about choosing a kayak and what length means in terms of buying a kayak or choosing a kayak, and another strictly about rocker. If you want to go see those videos, I'll put links to them up there or links down there. However, I have been a Redditor for a very long time, and I'm spending a little bit more time on Reddit lately, particularly our kayaking, and I'm seeing a lot of people who are lost at the very beginning of the concept of how to choose a kayak. And I don't mean like they want to know how much rocker there is or how rocker will affect their boat or how they edge or anything like that. It's way more basic. It's, I don't know what category of kayak I should be in. And as I think about it, it frustrates me a little bit because, 30 years ago when I bought my first boat, I had magazines as some resources and there were a handful of books. There just wasn't a ton of information. And I still managed to pick out a boat on my own that served me well for years that I absolutely loved. Today, people have all the resources, literally, back issues of magazines and manufacturers and videos, stuff that just didn't exist when I started kayaking. And I'm realizing that the problem is, I think, they have too much information. Decision fatigue is a real thing. Analysis paralysis is a real thing. So maybe I'm making this worse by adding to it, but what I want to do is very basic. 6 categories. If you're looking for a kayak, this is for you. For each of these categories, I'm going to give you some options for boats that represent that category. There are many boats that I could have chosen. I chose the ones that sort of come to mind when I think of that category. They are not the beginning or the end of options, but it's a place to look to see what I'm thinking about or trying to describe. So if you're like, I'm still not sure, go look at the boats that I'm talking about, and that will give you an idea. The other part of this is you could use a boat from one category in another category. There is certainly overlap, but the boats that I'm recommending are specifically designed for that category, and there will be benefits to using a boat specifically designed for that category. There is tons of overlap. You got to figure out sort of where you're willing to make concessions. So let's get started. I don't have these in any real order. They're the order that they came to me, but I want to start with people who are like thinking about fitness. I want to paddle a boat because I want to get fit. I do have to dispel the myth that arm strength is a kayaking thing. It is not. If it was, I would have huge arms, and I do not. Paddling is a sport of core and leg strength. You can get a great aerobic workout in the right kayak. Okay, so if you are looking for a fitness kayak, you want to get on the water and get your fitness increase, think about a kayak that is longer and lightweight. These boats will be very fast. They might be a sit-in kayak or they might be a sit-on surf ski. Look at Epic kayaks for examples for both of those. Really beautiful kayaks. Varying lengths from 12 to 20 feet. I would push towards a bit longer than 12 feet, but you could start off with a 12-foot one. So that is great for fitness. A lot of times those boats, particularly the surf skis, will use a thing called a wing paddle. If you're unaware, Google wing paddle, you'll learn all about them. Okay, if your goal is fishing, and this is probably the largest growth category in kayaks in North America, you are looking at a sit-on-top kayak from 9 to 12 or 14 feet. It'll be wide, it'll be stable, it'll be heavy. It will have the ability to accept kayak-specific fishing accessories. So rod holders and boxes and depth sounders or fish finders if you want them, all sorts of accessories. I swear people spend more on the accessories for kayak fishing than they do on the kayaks themselves. I've always believed that kayak fishermen are fishermen first, kayakers second. It's just a way to get to the fish. Look at boats made by Bonafide, Wilderness Systems. Those are both great examples of fishing-specific kayaks. Okay, recreational kayaking I have split into two categories. If you are primarily going to be on slow-moving rivers, class 2 or less, look at a sit-on-top kayak, 9 to 12 feet in length. It'll be wide, it'll be stable. Again, look at Wilderness Systems, look at Perception. The reason I think you should be doing a sit on top on a river is if the boat does flip, you flip it back over, you get on the boat, you keep paddling. Versus a sit-in kayak on a river, it fills with water. If your cockpit holds, 200 gallons of water, which it would be more than that, that's 1,600 pounds of water. You don't want to deal with that. If you're going to be on a river where boats get filled with water and taken, you're far better in a sit on top. However, if you want a recreational kayak for use on a lake, then I would look at a 10 to 14 foot recreational kayak sit in, gonna have a larger cockpit opening, easier to get in and out of. Like if your goal is, I wanna go look at birds, I wanna just sort of paddle a bit and chill, I wanna have a good time on the lake, but not necessarily wanting to make distance, this is where you're going to be. These boats are also going to be pretty wide and stable, but the dead giveaway of a recreational sit-on-top boat is the big cockpit opening. The Pungo 120, I think, is the king of recreational sit-in kayaks, and it's a great boat. Now, could you use the recreational sit-on-top for slow-moving rivers as a fishing kayak? Sure, but it may not have the ability to accept those fishing-specific accessories. Similarly, could you use your fishing kayak as I want to throw it on a slow-moving river or even a lake? Absolutely, but you're probably going to be carrying around a lot of extra weight that you don't need if you're not fishing. See what I'm saying in terms of there's lots of overlap, but there's always going to be some sort of sacrifice because of that overlap. Okay, if your goal is to get in a boat, load it with camping gear, and cover some distance and get to an island camping spot or something like that, then you want a touring kayak, also called a sea kayak. This will be a longer boat, usually greater than 14 feet, up to 17 or 18 feet, some even longer. Sit in with dry storage with hatch covers front and back. Dry storage, we say, they all usually leak a little bit. These boats will hold a lot of gear. These boats will go in a straight line really well. These boats will be pretty fast. Now, could you use this boat for fitness? Sure, but the fitness-specific boat is going to do better in regard to that, but you could do that in a touring kayak. Eddyline boats, the Fathom, the Sitka XT, my Delta 17, Wilderness Systems Tempest. All great boats, all super popular. The boat may have a rudder or a skeg. And if you want to know about the difference between rudders and skegs, there's a video up here. Okay, finally, if transport or storage of the kayak is your biggest concern, look at an inflatable like a Sea Eagle or a packable, assemblyable, that's not a word, I just made that word up, like the Kayak. I have a student who lives in an apartment and doesn't have a lot of space to store a boat. He has each of those and they're surprisingly good performers. I think he prefers the Kayak, but he also had a Sea Eagle that I was super impressed with. I paddled it and was super impressed with how it paddled. It feels now, inflatables now feel more like stand-up paddleboard inflatables do. Super hard, super rigid. But you are giving up some performance things with a boat that disassembles or a boat, those tend to be heavier, or an inflatable tend to not be quite as rigid, not quite as defined of a hull shape. So those are your categories. And I've already said a couple times, there is certainly overlap. But look at these categories, look at these types of boats to give you an idea of which of those you want to be in. There is no one boat that does everything great. A lot of kayaking is figuring out what sacrifices you're willing to make, but what your primary goal is. Another thing that I tell people a lot is think about where you want to be with a kayak in 2 years. What do you want to be doing in 2 years? Let's build towards that. Okay, I hope this was helpful. I get really sad when I see people asking questions on Reddit like, I have no idea what boat to get, what do you think? Because I don't think you're usually getting great advice on websites like Reddit. I think that there are nuggets of genius in there hidden by a sea of people who don't know what they're talking about. As always, I will say, regardless of what you're paddling, find an instructor, take a couple of lessons to at least get started on the right foot. As I said in the beginning, if you think it's about arm strength, it's not about arm strength. It is about finesse and technique. I hope this was helpful. I'll see you on the water.